the 3rd of October 2024. 2024 stroke 1760. Or you can sometimes search with it by the reverse 1760 2004. An easy way to remember it is that there are 1,760 yards in a mile. 1,760 yards in a mile. ESG is the short for environmental and social governance. So if you hear of ESG, that's what it means. Environmental and social governance. And now the EU has drawn up a directive to enforce this on not only EU citizens, but the rest of the world. When you search for a directive, and this is not easy, folks, you go into this Lex version. Do you see Lex up there? Do you see that? Euro Lex, that's the correct version of a directive. If there's any colliery information by a government or any body other than the EU itself, then that's not the proper directive. It's a selected version of the directive. Now, you can't see too well here, and I accept it. Just search EU Directive 2024/1760, and you get this here, Directive EU 2024/1760 of the European Parliament and Council on the 13th of June 2024. Now bear in mind, that's in the middle of this year, on corporate sustainability, due diligence, and amending Directive EU 2019/1937 and Regulations 2023/2859. Okay, so this is a directive that's amending other directives. So the directive is signed for the European Parliament by the President or Metsola, and for the Council and the President Mitchell, Michel, and it runs to an unbelievable length. I don't see page numbers, but it has to be brought in by 2006 in each member. By 2026 in each member state. 2026, that's 2 years away. Now, if you look at the date of this, the 13th of June 2024, and you have 1,760 directives, that'll show you the sheer volume of EU law they're pumping out. Volumes and volumes of it. And this is only half the way through. So there should be, if we count this as half the year, there should be double that, 3,400 or 3,400 EU directives. And this does not include regulations. This has to be transposed into Irish law by a statutory instrument. Now, this is such an immense piece of legislation that it'd take me all morning to deal with it. That's why I urge you yourself to go in and have a look at it. Now, remember, in a directive, there's the preamble. That's the wish list. That's persuasive on courts. Then there's the articles, and they are binding on the courts. And then there is the annexes, which specify what it applies to. Now, in most EU directives, including the SEA, Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive, and the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment Directive, of which I am very familiar, you usually get 11 articles. 11. And they're usually quite short, not that long at all. You could have some with 7 articles, and you might have 15. But that's about it. They tended to keep them short. But in recent years, they've gone bananas. And there are 38 articles in this directive. 38 articles in this directive. And that shows you the volume there is. Now, as someone who has spent a lot of time in courts in Ireland and in the High Court on 3 occasions, and been present when other people are involved in cases, this is something that cannot be figured out. No judge or nothing can figure it out. Now, we saw in the referendum on the family and on the status of women in the home, Minister Roderick O'Gorman said that he didn't have a clue what the amendments meant. So did Heather Humphreys, who was advocating it, and so did Minister McEntee. Didn't know what it meant, but they said the courts would figure it out. So how can you expect the courts to figure out something written by these gumbeans, right? Now, so I mean, if I were to go into the whole lot of it, essentially it binds the whole world to EU law. So up until now, this will force local companies. So, for example, if we take a company like, who would we pick here? Clonakilty Bacon Products, Tato Crisp Products, Guinness's, Heineken Beer, Animal Feeds, Paul and Vincent, Patton Mills, they're all Irish companies. They are going to be bound by this. But it extends to the whole world. They have to implement this on the entire world. And I'm going to read out the heading of the articles. Article 1 is the subject matter. It lays down the rules on the obligations for companies regarding actual and potential human rights, adverse impacts on the environment with respect to their own operations, the operations of the subsidiaries, and the subsidiaries and the operations carried out by their business partners in the chains of activities of those companies. That's right down the whole way. So if you're making, let's say, peanuts here in Ireland, you'd have to go and enforce this governance on the places that grow the peanuts. Okay, so the scope. The directive shall apply to companies which are formed in accordance with legislation. So all companies. Article 3. Article 3. For the purposes of this directive, a company means, so it means an incorporated company. No need to stop there. 3. 4, and it develops that a bit. And all the companies down in the chain, Article 5, due diligence. Member states shall ensure that companies conduct risk-based human rights and environmental due diligence as laid down in the Article 7. So they're bound to actually do due diligence. And I don't think that's defined. But that means they have to scrutinise everything, including the farm products, everything. Make sure every dot is crossed, so you'll have no option in future on a farm but to comply with everything they bring out by the department. You won't be able to pick and choose the schemes. Due diligence support at a group level. So here they are getting more down into it. Member states shall ensure that parent companies, so a group company. So if you take Kingspan, or you take any of those, you take Guinness's, let's say, if they have a group of companies, or O'Reilly Brothers have O'Reilly Concrete, O'Reilly Precast, all of the groups it applies to, so it catches everybody. Article 7, integrating for due diligence into company policies and risk management systems. So you have to get round the table, and the table has to have woke people on it, and you have to do all this woke stuff at the company table. Identify and assessing actual potential adverse impacts. So you have to see what are the adverse impacts. So who decides that? Who decides that? Some lassie with a pencil skirt recently with an arts degree deciding to tell farmers what is good for them and what isn't. And this comes into vogue with slurry and everything. And every new invention that comes up, you'll be obliged to do it, whether you're a farmer or a company, even though the old one works quite good. So it's all suiting the big producers. That's Article 9. That's Article 10, preventing potential adverse impacts. So you have to take action to prevent it. So if you say there's a farmer down there in rural Ireland with cows, and he's making a video out of them, well, that could be some kind of an offence. We can't allow him to sell his product, and you'll get a notice that from now on your product cannot be sold in the factory or the mart. Bringing actual adverse impacts to an end, so they're going to force this on the whole world. China, South Africa, everywhere. Is it any wonder that there's BRICS trying to get out from this? It's a communist charter, essentially. Ramifications of actual adverse impacts. Member states shall ensure that where the company has caused or jointly caused an actual adverse impact, the company provides remediation, remedies. Where the actual adverse impact is caused only by the company's business partner, voluntary remedial action may be provided by the company. So that's just telling them how they do with a company that's a partner. Meaningful engagement and risk with stakeholders, meaningful engagement with stakeholders. This is Article 13. Notification methods and company procedure, Article 14. So that provides for member states shall ensure that companies enable persons and entities listed in paragraph to submit complaints. So anyone up the road can complain about you. They can put in complaints, and that has to be processed. So you'll be watched like a hawk. You only need one lefty green in your parish to force compliance on everybody. That's Article 14. Article 15, monitoring. Member states shall ensure that companies carry out periodic assessment of their own operations, as if we hadn't enough with everything to contend with. So you'll have to monitor companies. Now, it won't apply to small companies as such, but it will apply to the bigger companies, but it will get down to us eventually. Communication, without prejudice to the exemption provided. All right, we'll not read that. There's communication. At least one official, it has to be in an official language of the EU. We'll not go there. Article 18, accessibility of information and on European single point access point. From the 1st of January 2029, member states shall ensure that when making public an annual statement referred to in Article 16.1 of this directive, companies submit that statement at the same time as the collection body referred to in this. So this is all going to have to be fed back. You're going to have to convince the EU that you're above board on this one. Model contractual clauses. In order to provide support to companies to facilitate their compliance with this, the Commission, they're involved, in consultation with Member States and stakeholders, shall adopt guidance on voluntary model contractual clauses by the 26th of January 2007. That is gobbledygook. They can tell you that means this, that and the other, and there's nothing you can do about it. Guidelines. Article 19. In order to provide support to companies of the Member States authorities on how companies shall fulfil their due diligence obligations in a practical manner and to provide support to stakeholders, the Commission, in consultation with Member States and stakeholders, the European Agency for Fundamental Rights, the European Environment, and all this blah, blah, blah. Look, this is pages and pages of it. Article 10. Accompanying measures. More measures. They will have you tied up in a straitjacket. Article 21, single help desk. It'll establish a single help desk. More jobs for them. And they'll tell you what to do. And they'll be from Timbuktu. And little girls ringing you to explain to you, hey, Mr. Smith, this is what you have to do. Article 22, combating climate change. I'll not go there. A huge bit of this on climate change. So they can hit you on climate any way they like. Member states shall ensure companies referred to in Article 2.1.8 adopt and put into effect a transition plan, a transition you can't get out of it, for climate change mitigation, which aims to ensure, though through best efforts, that the business model and strategy of the company are compatible with the transition to sustainable economy with the limited goal global warming to 1.5 degree in line with the Paris Agreement. That is baloney. There is no global warming and never will be any global warming to the extent they say. So here you have it. Climate will cover the whole lot. So I've always said the whole climate thing is a communist charter. Article 23, authorised representatives. Article 24, supervisory authorities. Oh my God, they'll fairly watch us now. We don't mind, as a farmer myself, I don't mind the reasonable supervision. You'll always get one or two people who will do bad things and damage the whole industry and the concept of our good food. That's not what we're on about here. This is all in scoping. This is everything. This is a big bucket of words. It's a barrel of words. Now, Article 25, powers and supervisory authority. Article 26, substantiated concerns. Substantiated concerns. Member states will ensure that natural and legal persons are entitled to submit substantiated concerns. So they could put in a concern that I'm not employing a gay vet, that the vets are not lesbian. Concerns through easily accessible channels. I needn't read any more. I think you can see the position there. Article 27, the penalties. They lay down strict penalties. That's basically that. There has to be strict penalties. If a company fails to comply with a decision imposing a pecuniary penalty within the applicable time limit, a public statement indicating the company responsible for the infringement and nature of the infringement. So it'll have to be published in the paper where you stand. You might be making stairs or furniture. Your name will be up. Same as if you're a tax defaulter. European network of supervisory authorities. A whole European network of supervisory authorities. Civil liabilities of companies and the right to full compensation. You'll have to pay anyone that's the least bit offended. If you get a message delivered to your door and you're making furniture and you're getting a new blade for your planer, and the lad that comes in is not happy with your policy, he can claim compensation. And that's a huge big article. Article 30, reporting of breaches and protection of reporting persons. If he reports you, he has to be protected. He can't be sacked. Public support, procurement and public concessions. Member States shall ensure the compliance obligation resulting from provision of national law transposing this directive on their voluntary implementation qualifies as an environmental and social aspect of contracting authorities may, in accordance with the directive, take into account. So if you're getting a public contract to build the stairs for some office or other, or provide chairs, you won't get it unless you're fully up to speed here. Amendment to Regulations 2023-2859. Exercise, Article 34, exercise of delegation. They can delegate it to somebody else. Committee procedures, Article 35. Review and reporting is Article 36. And transposition, this has to be transposed by the 26th of July 2026 and entry into force. Now, I'll just read Article 2, the scope. The directive shall apply to companies which are formed in accordance with legislation of a member state which fulfill one of the following conditions. It has more than 1,000 employees on average and has a net worldwide turnover of 450 million euros in the financial year. So it has to have 1,000 employees and have a bigger turnover than, that's 450 million euros in 1 year. The company did not reach the thresholds as referred to in point A, but is the ultimate parent company of a group that reaches these thresholds. So the company mightn't have 1,000 employees, it mightn't have that turnover, but it has other companies that the combined effect of them do. The company entered into the company entered into, just want to make sure my camera's on, entered into or is the ultimate parent company of a group that entered into franchising or licensing agreements in the union in return for royalties with dependent third parties. So that'll be McDonald's, Starbucks, KFC. The directive shall also apply to companies which are formed in accordance with the legislation of a third country and fulfilled one of the following. The company generated a net turnover of 450 million euros in the year. The company did not reach that threshold, but the ultimate parent company of the group did, and the company entered into or is the ultimate, if I said that bad before, sorry, the company entered into or is the ultimate parent company of a group that entered into franchises or licensing agreements in the union in return for royalties. That would be McDonald's again, where the ultimate parent company has as its main activity the holding of shares or operations in a subsidiary. So it goes on then to make it very wide, and then there's legal definitions. Now, this is a massive piece of legislation. You'd be holding down the cursor for a long time. I advise you not to try to read it all, but just do please Google it and get the proper version, the one with EU or EU Lex. That's the correct one. Get the correct one and just see that I'm not bluffing you. The sun is coming up now. I'm not bluffing you. It's the 3rd of October. It's about 8:30, I think. But anyway, in the morning. Anyway, folks, that's the directive. So if you are a farmer producing cocoa in Africa and you sell to a company like Nestle, Cadbury's or Lind, or what any of those chocolate companies, and you're just producing a little bit on your farm, they can follow you down and they can check and see what's happening on your farm, and they can see if your employment policy is right. So you mightn't want to employ women for some reason, or they might be all women. They'll come down on this and all of this stuff. So this is communism. This is complete control by the EU. And the American Kamala Harris, Tim Walz government, if they get into power, they'll sign up for this and bring it compulsory for the United States. Starmer in England, no problem. He'll go for it full blast. But if Trump gets in, if Trump and J.D. Vance gets in, I'd say it's the sort of legislation that he would face them down and tell them, get away from this. And he might pull the United States out of it, but the rest of the world is in it. So what are the solutions? The solution is to get rid of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. They voted for this. They had to agree to this. The European Parliament had to vote for this, and they had to agree to it. And the leaders of each member state had to agree to bring in this. So now they have to transpose it. And before the transposition takes place, and that could be very soon, but it might be a year, we have till 2026, we need to have a government which will say, no way, we're not having this, whether you like it or whether you're not, and create a showdown with the European Union. I hope I brought that clear. I may come back to it. My video is a bit long. It is something else. Something else. Now also watch underneath. I may get some videos on this that would be worth watching. But this catches everything. Under this, nothing gets away. And it's completely in the opinion of somebody sitting at a desk with an arts degree. An actress or something else that's out of luck and gets a job can force this on the whole world. This is the communist state. And when you take this, add this to other measures by all the different big bodies to control everybody, then you can see where we're heading. And this is a very, very dangerous and a very dark place where our freedom to do what we wish is curtailed. Unbelievable stuff. But there you have it. We'll see you back. Look at it, watch and see if I post that underneath. Sometimes I do fail to do that. Sometimes I have computer problems and internet problems. But at least you know now, I'm probably the only one in the world that brings this to your attention. Certainly the only one in Ireland who brings this to your attention. And in the forthcoming general election, you, the people, will hopefully have a choice. We're doing the best we can to give you a choice to face down this type of oppression. Good luck and thank you.